Hello, everyone, and welcome to SlasherU, a college football podcast from Slasher Sports. I'm your host, Christian Rao, here with my co-host, Steve Feck, and we have another great episode for you today. Just loaded with Monday moaning. Steve, what's going on? Happy Monday to you, and what a weekend of college football it was.
Yeah, and I actually kind of picked the wrong weekend to kind of get away from my TV set. I mean, I had updates from you, and I was checking in on various things, but yeah, this stretch run is going to be even more fun than I thought because it was kind of looking like they were trying to predestine certain things in the polls and the college football playoff polls and everything, but teams themselves are actually making cases for themselves and kind of determining where the chips might fall.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to get to our thoughts on the AP polls here in just a minute. But first, we have to, in my mind, talk about the elephant in the room. We thought we were getting the game of the year this week, and I think we did. It was in the right conference. It was in the right week, but it was with the wrong game in my mind. I think the LSU Bama game was probably the most exciting game that I've seen. Now, Bama's been involved in two great games this year, and unfortunately, it's the loss on both their sides. Brian Kelly, we talked about it on Five for Friday. I'm sorry, on our Saturday show, we talked about it. We thought that this LSU team was 1 year out.
Mm-hmm.
I might not think that way anymore. After watching how they took care of Bama, watching Alabama struggle against LSU's defense for the most part, Brian Kelly has got this LSU Tigers team in a very good spot, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I think that his system is more consistent. I think it's clicking, on all cylinders more consistently than I think a lot of us thought. Because, I mean, Brian Kelly does have a rather distinct and sophisticated system. So I thought, I certainly thought, and I think you agreed, that it might take them some time. There'd be some inconsistency. And I think earlier in the year, that was the case. There was some inconsistency. But, LSU, I mean, Brian Kelly, in my mind, won Coach of the Year strictly by going for two in the first overtime. I mean, in that environment, in prime time, I mean, yes, it was home. It doesn't matter. I mean, in that situation, and I don't think he hesitated for a nanosecond. He was going to go for two. He had it in his mind where, if we score, and Alabama scores and we score, we're going for two. Gutsy move, courageous move, whatever descriptive word, adjective you want to add to it, that's fine. But LSU at home proved its worth and proved to the rest of the SEC, okay, you need to pay attention to us now, and good luck sleeping during the offseason.
That 2-point conversion decision by Brian Kelly absolutely tells me that he's doing everything right in his first year as a program. Mm-hmm. That speaks more than just winning that football game. That speaks that he has trust in his players. He will show that he has faith in his offense and his players. And that speaks volume to the recruiting trail, if you will. And he just probably won a few battles for not just winning that game, but the way he won that football game. When he came into LSU, obviously he had some great success in Notre Dame. Couldn't get the final thing done. Couldn't win the college football playoffs, the national championship. He made it a few times. But a few times in a row that he went that far, he lost to Nick Saban. He is quoted in the offseason to state, "I want to beat Nick Saban." Who doesn't want to beat Nick Saban? You know what I mean? ? We know exactly what you mean now because we just saw it. And regardless of what else happens for LSU for the rest of the year, they're set up to head to the SEC championship game right now. But whatever happens, this is an absolute winning season for Brian Kelly and the LSU Tigers. This is something that was definitely not expected to start year one, especially after what we saw them struggle against a Florida State team week one. And they lost against Tennessee, which we have seen that they have now been exposed, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. But this LSU team is well on their way to being a team that we talk about for a very long time. Many are going as far as saying that Alabama's dynasty is on the decline and it might even be over. I don't know if I think that far yet. I think that
Yeah.
we're still going to be still paying attention to Alabama for a very long time. But this SEC West is going to be very tough for a long time, and it's probably going to be headlined by Alabama and the LSU Tigers.
Yeah, I mean, Alabama's one of those teams that if they go 10-2, they're having a bad year. They didn't go undefeated. There are just programs like that, and even in pro sports, you have teams that they won all these games, the Dodgers or whatever team it might be, but but they had a bad this or a bad that. I mean, Alabama's not going anywhere. Okay, this is just going to be one of those years. I don't want to say it's a resetting year because I don't think Alabama tried to do that.
Yeah.
But what I really took away from this, and again, Young had a great game, but Jaden Daniels, big game performance in a big game. He didn't have gaudy, flashy numbers, but he made the passes when he needed to. He ran the ball when he needed to. He did everything he could to get that team. When we were talking about Tennessee, Georgia, we were talking about Hooker willing the Volunteers potentially past Georgia. That's what Jaden Daniels here. So I say I don't have any stickers. I mean, I guess I could,
there you go.
Virtual sticker there on my head. What a performance! What a thing! And then I was shocked when because I wasn't watching the game, and when you had sent a message to me, I was like, I guess I really need to start watching this game now because I was, because you had said LSU just went ahead, and then of course Alabama tied it. Everything you could have wanted out of this game happened, including, and again, Bama fans, I don't hate you. Okay. We just need the talk of 3 SEC teams in the college football playoff to die. Unfortunately, the Crimson Tide had to fall on the sword and have that gut punch in order to put that beast to rest.
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that we are far away from 3 teams heading to the college football playoffs. I don't even think we're going to get 2 in the SEC this season. Alabama, I think, is out. We have never seen a 2-loss team head to the college football playoffs. I think if any year we get a 2-loss team, it could happen this year just based off the upsets we saw last week. We might run out of 1-loss teams that are quote unquote deserving in the eyes of the committee. Not in our eyes, but in the eyes of the committee. Right. So I don't see it happening, though. I'm going to go on record that if you have 2 losses, you're not making it. So keep that in mind. We talked about, can Alabama get the run done? Gibbs was supposed to be an X factor. He didn't surpass 100 yards. There was only a total rushing of 137 yards for Bama. LSU got the job done. And Bryce Young struggled at first, I would say. I don't think he was completely 100%. I think that the fact that, and I'm not sure if it really had anything to do with the pain in his shoulder, but I think that the limited reps, he didn't do anything in the bye week. And then they spoke about the limited reps he had in practice, only 25 throws per game or per day in practice. That's got to really be an issue, just getting your timing down and maybe have some mental, just mistakes. And I think he made a few. Thankfully, it didn't result in a lot of turnovers, only 1 turnover by Alabama, which it was a costly one in the opening drive that did set the tone for LSU. This game was a great game. I don't know if I thought this game was better than the Tennessee Bama game. I'd have to say yes, because it went to overtime. It was just, it was more of a grind. Tennessee game was just completely just air rated every single time. Mm-hmm. So I would say this is a better game of the year. So game of the year so far till next week. No way is there going to be 3 SEC teams. And that is exactly because of what we saw as well in the other SEC match. The game that we thought was going to be the game of the year did not turn into it. Number 1 in the country in the coaches poll, or the AP poll, I should say, versus number 1 in the country in the college football poll, Tennessee versus Georgia. And this game just did not take off for the Tennessee Volunteers. Georgia just absolutely took care of business. They reminded the entire nation, and reminded you, Steve, too, because I know you've been a little low on Georgia this year. They reminded them that they are the defending national champions. Stetson Bennett took care of everything he needed to take care of. Forget those interceptions in the rough time he had against Florida the week prior. that defensive line we spoke up, they could be completely underrated and not paid attention to. Well, they just completely massacred Hendon Hooker, if you will. There was multiple times on 3rd and 4th down, he couldn't even get the ball out. Now, granted, I think Hendon Hooker held on to the ball a little too long, but I know that he was worried about making mistakes. I'm nervous about his Heisman chances, but most of all, Tennessee's college football chances might be out the window as well. Georgia looked absolutely amazing in this football game. And after watching that football game, I was a little worried and skeptical at the beginning of the season first. I would say not as much as you, but I would say I was skeptical at first. Now, I don't think there's a team in the country that can beat this team if they play like that any day of the week.
You know what I think really highlights Bennett's performance is that his top 2 receivers, every time they were targeted, the ball was there and they made the catch. McIntosh and McConkey were targeted, the ball was there and they made the catch. There were no mistakes going to the go-to receivers. That tells you a lot. The Georgia defense, I mean, I was a little worried about the linebacker core because I think because there were some injuries there, and and if there was going to be any part of that defense to exploit, it would have been that. But not even the medium range passing game went on there. There was under 200 yards passing and under 100 yards rushing. And this is the number 1 offense by far in the country.
Yeah, Tennessee didn't even surpass 300 yards total offense.
Yeah.
They're at 289.
Yeah. And I know, and I've heard some people say, though thankfully not many, but there was rain and that could have affected it. No.
Well, I'll rebuttal that a little bit. And I will say that Tennessee has been known to be a very big pass heavy offense. And we see that. We saw with the Alabama game, right? I do believe that the rain, because it was a very heavy rain, did have something to do with their struggles. But before it started raining, the offensive scheme and strategy they started taking was these curl routes, these comeback routes that were just trying to expose certain aspects of the Georgia defense on the sidelines, and they couldn't get any big plays going, even when it was dry. So when they were down and they absolutely needed the pass, that's when the rain came, and that's when Tennessee struggled because they just couldn't get the run going at all. So I think there was an issue with the rain with Tennessee. Sure, but that is not the reason they lost this football game. It could have been 80 degrees and dry for the entirety of this, and it would still be the same result. Georgia looked outstanding. But I think it needs to go without mentioning that the rain did really hurt Tennessee in this football game.
Yeah, but again, they had to come out guns a-blazing right from the first drive, and that didn't happen.
No.
So the fact that it started raining later in the game, the second part of the ball game, okay, that's unfortunate, but the bottom line is you absolutely did not get the job done early in the game. So if you're not getting the job then, you can't say, oh, the Georgia boosters somehow had, a rain dance done.
They're controlling the rain.
So that's why, the big money boosters, that's why, it's not that. Okay, Tennessee just did not play Tennessee football. I think I don't want to say they were tentative. In theory, liked the idea of going to those curl routes, and I thought there would be some more over the middle short range passes as well. I like it in theory, but if it wasn't working the first couple of drives you tried it, then you need to go back to what does work, and you throw it downfield and you take chances and you try to open up the running game a little bit. But Georgia was just not going to allow that to happen in this game.
Yeah, now we see Georgia as the only unbeaten team left in the SEC. We normally don't have that kind of conversation when we are at the beginning of November, but here we are. And after watching that game, I mean, we both went on record on Saturday thinking Tennessee could beat that game. It seemed like the stars were aligned. They were a -9 favorite or -9 underdog, just like they were in Bama. They were on a hot streak. Georgia made us eat our words, and I will be the first to admit that I did not see that coming whatsoever. There it is. Smart move. I hope that wasn't a note card you need for the next topic here, but let's talk about the TCU Horned Frogs. I don't think you need a note card for this one because we have been talking about these Horned Frogs for a very long time. This conference, how deep it is. TCU, Sonny Dykes, this team is finding a way to just win football games. No matter what the consequences, no matter what the situation, TCU is finding a way to win football games. They are 9-0, and they are going to find themselves in the top 4, I think, when Tuesday's rankings come out for the college football. They beat Texas Tech 34-24 on the back of not only just Max Duggan, but Kendre Miller.
Mm-hmm.
How amazing. He surpasses 1,000 yards on the season on an amazing game. He went for 158 yards and a touchdown on 21 attempts. The last 2 games against West Virginia, he averaged 10 yards a carry. And last week against Texas Tech, this past week, I should say, he averaged 7.5 yards per carry. This TCU team, yes, they're just finding ways to win, if you will, but they're firing in all cylinders. This team is dangerous, and they're not getting the love they deserve in the rankings. And we're going to talk about that after we discuss this game. But watch out for this team. Watch out.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, they just don't panic. We were talking about how Tennessee changed its game plan for whatever reason, and TCU just does what it does. And I think some of the love they don't get is because they're not flashy until late in the game. They generally always start slow. Maybe they're coming from behind pretty often. I thought I saw something where they were trailing going, I think 4 times of their wins. They were behind at some point in the game. But that's the whole point. I mean, Sonny Dykes has a game plan. Dugan executes that game plan. Their defense makes the big plays at the big moments. Okay, yes, they may stumble early or give up a big play here and there. Yeah, I mean, you can say that about a whole lot of different defenses. They play their game. When you play your game and you stay consistent, you're not going to get nervous in the fourth quarter if you need to come from behind. You've gotten it done all year, so it's not strange territory for you. You haven't been blowing teams out all year, and now suddenly, oh my God, we need to rally here in the second half. So you could say that about Tennessee to a degree that they're not used to being in that particular, other than the Alabama game, in that particular scenario. But TCU is just slow and steady. Let's just play our football. Let's not worry about the polls yet. Let's not worry about the headlines. I don't even know that the players, I mean, of course, every player down deep wants to be considered for a Heisman,
Sure.
or some national award. I don't think that really, you don't hear a lot of talk about that from the players themselves. So TCU is the kind of team that no one's going to want to play in the college football playoff.
I agree.
Because they just do it, and they don't care if you have all the film on them. They don't care.
They got to play Texas next week, and we just talked about how, first of all, they won the game. They found ways to win. They won without their leading receiver. Quentin Johnson wasn't even in the game, and he's probably my favorite receiver so far this year. He makes unbelievable catches. I can't wait to see him on Sundays because he is going to be one of those players that I feel like we talk about for the next decade if he gets on the right team. They play Texas next week. This is the College Game Day already set up for next week. Second time in Austin for the season. Last time College Game Day was in Austin, it was that crazy Texas-Alabama game. We saw Quinn Ewers go wild for a quarter, and Texas wound up just missing Alabama. TCU are 9-0. They have a chance to go 10-0, and they're right now against Texas. They are a 7-point underdog. Wild. I don't get it. However, we said the same thing about Texas being a favor against Kansas State, and they got the job done. But everyone keeps sleeping on this TCU team. If you haven't figured it out yet, they find ways to win the football game. And I don't see that being any different. Unless we hear some crazy news. Quentin Johnson's injury was just an ankle injury, so I'm sure he'll be back. I'm sure he'll be back and ready to roll for the game against Texas. I just can't see TCU losing this game against Texas Longhorns. Texas, I feel like, is the most, and I hate to say it because I really like what Quinn Ewers is doing, but I feel like this team, 6-3, they're doing great, but they're way too high in the rankings. Texas is getting a lot more love than they deserve. Prove me wrong. I've already ate my words about Georgia this week. maybe I'll eat my words about Texas. I just can't see it happening. I think TCU is going to win that football game. I'm sure we'll be talking about that one on our Saturday morning special, though, without question, Steve.
Oh, absolutely. And then I'm really curious to see on Tuesday when the playoff rankings come out. Are they going to keep going chalk, like statistical chalk?
Yeah.
Or are they going to look at it and have the conversations that you and I are just having about TCU and say, you know what? They're undefeated. They always get it done. There's not a whole lot of wild inconsistency. I think Ohio State, maybe they were complacent against Northwestern. It's hard to say. Michigan was trailing at halftime against Rutgers, and as a Rutgers follower, I almost had to go and have my heart device recalibrated because, I mean, Rutgers, they don't score on anybody, but still they were ahead against Michigan. I mean, of course, the game ended the way you would expect it to end.
Yeah.
But so you look at that and you say, well, if you're going to forgive that performance by Ohio State, forgive that bad first half by Michigan against Rutgers, why can't we give that same love to TCU? And I think it really comes down to the ratings game.
I think you're right.
And it's unfortunate. I mean, there's a business aspect to college sports, whether we like it or not. You very rarely hear the word amateur sports used talking about the NCAA and about college sports anymore. Maybe the non-revenue sports, sure, cross country, whatever, swimming, sure, okay. But the big revenue sports, it's big revenue, it's big business. So I'm just really curious about this. And as good as as well as Texas has recovered in the middle of the season here, I don't see how they find a way for TCU to lose to them. TCU would have to lose the game. I can't see Texas winning the game in this scenario.
And we haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen TCU lose a football game. We've seen them find ways to win. TCU is getting some love in the AP polls. We'll see what happens if they get love in the college football polls come Tuesday. But TCU does get the number 4 spot in the most recent AP polls that came out on Sunday. Georgia leads the pack at number 1, Ohio State, Michigan 2-3 with TCU in the 4 spot. I think that's what it's gonna look like in the college football polls as well. The most interesting thing to me about this AP poll, though, is Georgia received 62 of the 63 first place votes. That is the most unanimous first place voting we have seen all season, with the only extra vote going to Ohio State. I mean, you look at this, I mean, they did it right finally, Steve, in my mind. They gave the undefeated teams left the top 4 spots. I can get down with that. Now, we have 2 Big Ten teams in the middle of the pack. Some might think that TCU belongs to be up in the 2 spot instead, especially since Ohio State and Michigan struggled at the beginning of their games. They did find a way to win the game. I am not mad at this top 4 spot here. Before we dig deep into the rest of them, how do you feel about the top 4 of the AP poll?
Well, I would have TCU too.
Yeah,
I would. I mean, it's just as simple as that. I would have TCU too. And it's not, when we say things like that, I can understand why fan bases sometimes get upset and leave less than flattering comments questioning our parentage when we say things like this about teams like Ohio State or Michigan. It's not a knock. They're great football teams. But I think when you're looking at, and I don't look at it analytically, I look at it like who could put on the best performance in a championship in the championship final. And for me, it's now what Georgia has shown with their defense, Georgia and TCU. Ohio State and Michigan, there's a lot of inconsistency, a lot of fluctuation. I mean, I would say that they're better than Brian Kelly's Notre Dame teams that were always ranked pretty high, then got blown out in championship games. But I think Ohio State and Michigan are more prone to get blown out or lose by multiple touchdowns than TCU would be in a situation. So for me, it would be TCU too.
We see multiple teams in this week's AP Top 25 with 3 losses. Texas at 18, Notre Dame at 20. We see Kansas State at 23 and Florida State at 25. What is missing from that picture, Steve, is a Coastal Carolina team with only 1 loss. That is an issue in my mind with the AP voters. Yes, I understand that they are a group of 5 team, and the loss they have is to a team that is at the bottom of the Sun Belt Conference right now. But it should go without saying, if you are a one-loss team, thankfully we got Liberty finally in the rankings. I think Liberty finally got what they deserved. They go from unranked all the way to 19 after beating Arkansas, which was well-deserved, might I add. But there shouldn't be a 3-loss team ahead of a 1-loss team, no matter what division. If they are an FBS team, they should be in that top 25 over a 3-loss team, in my mind.
Oh, no. We've been beating that drum all year. And then conversely, we all had our wonders about Clemson. How can Clemson drop to number 12? Okay. I understand it was a bad loss. Okay. You cannot tell me that Clemson, with one loss in 1 week, is now suddenly a worse team than USC or UCLA.
You know why it is, and this is my thought process. Remember last week we had the conversation that the team that struggled the worst on their bye week was Clemson, because now all their wins don't look as good because Syracuse is on a downfall, Wake Forest is on a downfall, and then they're lost to Notre Dame here, and Notre Dame has had their upsets, losing to Stanford, losing to Marshall. I think that's where it comes in. Not that I agree or disagree with it. I think that they should probably still be in the top 10 in my mind. Now you get Alabama as a 2-loss team ahead of them. Now obviously they have, and same with LSU, 2-loss team. Obviously those losses are to teams that are in the top 5 or even top 5. But when you have a 1-loss team that is still in charge of their entire conference, I'm not surprised, or I'm a little shocked that they're not at least in the mix with the other Pac-12 foes. They dropped them below 3 of the Pac-12 foes. Yeah, that's interesting. But I would say that it probably definitely revolves around that their strength of schedule, which we have screamed about strength of schedule a lot this season. So there is probably some justice in this conversation, but that's probably where it comes from. Because Syracuse's schedule, or their team does not look as good as they once was, but lost 3 straight. We just saw what happened to Wake Forest 2 weeks in a row. Notre Dame has had their issues. Now they look pretty good. That's why they're back in the rankings. I think that's hurt Clemson more than anyone.
Yeah, I just don't think their analysis is applied consistency. So that's, I would be shocked if Clemson is that low.
Yeah, I was going to ask you,
in the college football playoff. I would be really shocked to see that. I would be shocked to see USC and UCLA ahead of Alabama, Ole Miss, and Clemson in this discussion.
We have never had a 2-loss team in the college football playoff. Will that come into consideration when the college football rankings come out and we see those 1-loss teams like USC, UCLA, Ole Miss, and Clemson pop up in front of LSU? Maybe not Ole Miss because LSU beat Ole Miss, but those other Pac-12 foes, could we see them jump ahead of a team like LSU and Alabama because of that 1 loss? Probably not, right?
Yeah, no, I really don't think so. Because again, if you're going to look at it analytically, I don't think that USC and UCLA are better football teams than certainly. I think they have Oregon as the top ranked Pac-12 team. I think that's right.
Me too.
They're not a better team than Alabama. They're not a better team than Ole Miss. They're not a better team than Clemson. That doesn't make them bad teams. You're still in the top dozen, but I just don't. I don't see it. I get it because USC and UCLA are fun teams to watch, but there's lots of fun teams to watch. Coastal Carolina, for example, UT San Antonio, for example, Baylor. I mean, honestly, I was surprised that Baylor didn't get in the 25. If you're going to put UC up there, if you're going to move, Washington back in and Florida State, there were just so many decisions here in this AP. I didn't get a chance to listen to the podcast. They generally put out a podcast later in the evening on Sunday, and I didn't get to it before we got together with our meetings about different things. But I want to hear them try to explain this to me because I really don't understand. And quite honestly, I think Tulane should be ranked higher. I think Tulane's a better team than Penn State and North Carolina. I think Liberty should be ahead of North Carolina State and Texas. They've earned it. They've earned it. Again, Texas has 3 losses. I don't understand.
I'm with you. And the college football playoff rankings last week only had one team different. Liberty was not in the college football rankings. I would not be shocked if we saw multiple teams, up to 5, that are in the AP poll that are not in the college football rankings. I wouldn't be shocked whatsoever. Speaking of shocked, let's talk about the wild win in Birmingham for the UTSA Roadrunners. I saw on Twitter people called the cardiac runners, and I think that is a perfect fit for this game, with UTSA finding a way to beat UAB at home, the first loss for UAB this season, 44-38 in double overtime. Frank Harris won the game for the Roadrunners. What a fantastic win for these guys. And I will be honest, this game had me on the edge of my seat because the offense did their job for UTSA, but the defense had more struggles than I'd like to mention. The secondary had some rough times. The run defense, they couldn't stop McBride for the second year in a row. That McBride kid, he is amazing. I mean, they called him a magician. They called him a magician on the broadcast, and I couldn't find a better word to describe what he was doing out there. He is very good. I am quite shocked, and I'm happy to see that he's in a smaller school like in Conference USA, but I'm shocked that he didn't enter the transfer portal and find himself on one of those big name teams. I'm glad he didn't, because it's fun watching him do what he does for UAB. But man, is he something special. And we saw that again this season. And that was almost the deciding factor that kept them in the game. I said that I thought Zeno wasn't the guy. Hopkins didn't play. Zeno came in, played quarterback. He did quite well. He did throw some turnovers. He did have some mistakes, but when it came down to the end of the game, he got them that touchdown with 15 seconds to go, got them into overtime, scored a touchdown in the first overtime. At the end of the game, although UTSA's defense struggled mightily throughout the game, they found a way at the very end. Tenacity came in. Jeff Traylor's defense and the UTSA defense won the game. How cinematic, how poetic is it that at the end of a second overtime, it's all thanks to that defense, to a 4th and 16, I believe it was. And they just got the job done. Good job for the Roadrunners. They move to 7-2 now in a commanding lead in Conference USA, Steve.
You can sum up the victory in 2 words. Meep. That's some of the best hashtags in college football.
Oh, for sure.
The 2 best college football teams in the state of Texas are very similar in that they just find ways to win football games. TCU, UT San Antonio. Yes, a University of Texas, but you have to add San Antonio. They are better than Texas. They're better than Baylor. They can beat you multiple ways. And for this might be the 3rd or 4th consecutive week, statistically on paper, the opposing quarterback had better numbers than Frank Harris, but Frank Harris won the game and ultimately took over the game and got the job done. Yeah, I have a hard time saying Frank Harris's name because I literally start to drool because I see him in Giants blue. I just see
they're still
him
firing all cylinders, man, and that's what we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. Kavorian Barnes is taking over as the leading rusher. And that's a good thing to have when you're handing over the reins in the middle of a successful season to a freshman. That's a really good thing to have. And Harris looked great, and this wouldn't be a very great UTSA recap if we didn't talk about the amazing catches by Franklin. I mean, both those touchdowns he had, especially the second one. The second one was immaculate. Not only did he get one foot down, he got both down. That was a catch that would have been good on Sundays, and we're going to see him on Sundays. I mean, what an amazing game by these guys.
I think we're going to see them both. I think Joshua Cephas is the kind of receiver. Okay, he won't go as high in the draft as Franklin may, but he's the guy. He's your go-to guy when you need to get a first down, when you
Yeah.
need to get the ball on an out route, catch it, get your feet in, go out of bounds. Franklin's the guy. He's the big play guy. He's the highlight reel guy. And he's had catches that should be on UTSA's media guides for the next 20 years. And you could probably have enough to have only Franklin, even though he's graduated and gone, to only have his catches on the cover of the media guide, and you wouldn't have to duplicate the picture for 20 years. It's just amazing. But again, for those people that listen to this and say every week it's UTSA, yes, we have fallen in love with the way this team plays football, just like we're falling in love with TCU. They get the job done. They don't have to blow everybody out. They don't have to have the gaudy statistics. They get the job done. The players accept their roles. You talking. You talked about the freshman running back. Brady was no slouch for most of the year. It's not like guys weren't performing, but they see, okay, this guy's really helping us, in these formations and these changes we're making. He's getting it done. So when the players are then called upon, they can rotate in talented players at the receiver, in the backfield. Injuries have really dictated a lot of things on the offensive line and the defense. So imagine if they were healthy, maybe there'd be some more impressive wins. But okay, they got up to 5 votes, which again is an improvement over 1, but they're a top 25 football team.
And they're going to finish there when the season's over. It might not happen till the very end, but when the season's over, we will see them with a number next to their name. They take on La Tech back in the Dome this Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Back on ESPN Plus too, might I add. I know that the broadcasters aren't always the best, presentations not always the best, but at least it's going to be more visible than Stadium, so that's pretty cool there. They have a clear path in my mind to 10-2. I said if they can find a way to get past North Texas and UAB, there's a clear path to 10-2. They finished the season against La Tech. They head to Rice, which is probably their toughest battle for the rest of the year, and then they come back and finish the season at home against UTEP. 10-2. I'm feeling it. This is a bubble. This is a bubble NY6 team in my mind. You're gonna take control of the Conference USA. We've already seen that, and then find a way to just get the 10-2. I think they can do that. Jeff Traylor, another great season, back-to-back Conference USA championships. Sounds like it to me in my mind, Steve.
Oh, absolutely. There's not a doubt in my mind that they're going to run the table going out. And I really hope that they get, an NY6 bowl or even like New Year's Eve. I mean, a bowl that a lot of people always watch. I'd love to see him play in the Sun Bowl because the Sun Bowl generally has pretty good television ratings. It's played in the afternoon on New Year's Eve. I would love it's right there in the state of Texas, so their crowd can travel. I think that would be an ideal setup because they're going to get a Power 5 opponent in that Sun Bowl. And then if they have the type of performance that we think that we can have, now we're talking not just top 25, now we're talking top 20 and maybe even beyond for UTSA.
I could see it happening. They will finish with a number next to their name, and no matter what bowl they have, we will have you covered here on SlasherU. All right, let's talk about something I know that's another thing near and dear to your heart, and that's the FCS. And wouldn't be an FCS recap this week if we didn't talk about the most exciting game in the FCS. Sacramento State finds a win against Weber State, 33-30. Sacramento State 9-0. I know I sent to you in the comments. I hope that we see, whether it's in the championship game or in the bracket somewhere, a playoff game between Sacramento State and Holy Cross, 2 undefeated teams left in the FCS. I cannot wait to watch that football game if it happens. I think we might see it eventually at some point. But looking at this game, it looked like it came down to the running game on Sacramento State. They found a way to get over 200 yards. It was pretty consistently on the rest of it. Sacramento State total yards 431 to only Weber State's 319. This game came down to the wire, and only a field goal wins it for Sacramento State. Something we said initially at the beginning in our preview. We said this could be a game that's only won by a field goal, and look what happened, Steve.
Yeah, Sacramento State has been underappreciated all year. There are so many great teams, out west in the FCS and certainly in the Big Sky. I mean, it's easy to kind of like fly under the radar. Now, now that they've really vanquished Weber State and not have to worry about safeties, they actually won it on the field, not waiting for goofy safeties.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Weber State fans.
I mean, that was a wild. I mean, it deserves to be talked about. It was a wild, crazy thing that we probably will never see again.
Okay, and I could even live with if it happened twice.
Yeah,
but to happen 4 times in the first half, that's just. I don't think we'll ever see that again.
No way.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how the projected playoff bracket and seedings comes out this week, because now we're starting to see, okay, you may have Holy Cross and Sacramento State face off in a semifinal, let's say, and not in the championship game, just depending on how things fall out. But I think there's enough teams that are starting to come back to the pack more, that if Holy Cross can win out and Sacramento State should win out, I think then you're kind of protecting those undefeated teams where they could potentially have a roadways. It'll be interesting to see if South Dakota State can hang on. I think defensively they're a better football team than Sacramento State.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're talking about a playoff, and the FCS has multiple teams in this bracket, it's not like the 4-team sham of a playoff in the FBS. It's a pretty expanded field. If they have a stumble, then maybe Sacramento State actually steps into that top spot. It is a shame that not all of the teams are going to play in the FCS playoff. But be thankful if you get a chance and you're up late, you can't sleep or whatever it is. You're just getting home late from an evening out with friends. Sit down, even if you're only watching a half of it. Catch a Sacramento State game. Because they generally play usually 9 or 10 o'clock kickoff. So if you're home by 11, you have a chance to actually catch a good part of the game. They're a fun team to watch. Another team that does everything well. They seem to find that part of their opponent's game and then they exploit it, to their advantage. So hats off to Sacramento State. I can't wait for the FCS playoffs. I just cannot wait. And I think we have to do some kind of a bit about the FCS playoff projected rankings, as well as talk about the championship playoff rankings, because these are games that are going to fill our football watching time in December while we're waiting for these bigger bowl games and the playoff games.
I think we need to dedicate an entire show to the FCS playoffs when it does come in. Speaking of Sacramento State, you're right. They usually play at 9 o'clock. That's what they're going to play this coming Saturday against Portland State, who are 4-5. Then they finish the season against 5-4 UC Davis. There is nothing in my mind that says this team is not going to finish 11-0, Steve.
No. I mean, UC Davis could be a trap game potentially. They've had some pretty high points, but they've been wildly inconsistent. They're just undermanned compared to teams like Sacramento State or even like Montana State or South Dakota State. They're undermanned. So I think Sacramento State skates through it, and they're at least a 2 seed. But don't be surprised if they're the number 1 seed going into the FCS playoffs.
We finally see Liberty make it to the top 25. We finally see it happen, and that's all due to a pretty interesting and a pretty big-time goal line stop against Arkansas to win against the Razorbacks 21-19. It was stated that Hugh Freeze said it might be his biggest win of his career. That's saying a lot based on his career. And Arkansas Sam Pittman said he knows that it's his worst loss of his career. I will say this, Arkansas could be in the mind of maybe some Auburn folks, as Brian Harsin couldn't get the job done against Arkansas, but a potential candidate for the job in Auburn could get it done with the Liberty Flames. This was a really good game between Arkansas and Liberty, and we finally got to see on a stage with Hugh Freeze against the SEC, a conference that he knows very well and might know very well in the future. His name is going to be swirling around, especially now after this win against Arkansas. Liberty's finally on the map where they deserve to be. What was your thoughts on this game and your thoughts about Hugh Freeze and this Liberty squad?
Well, I think Liberty did a great job of not letting the moment dictate how they played the football game. Another team that stuck to its guns, did what's best. Um, I don't think they looked very tentative to me. Now, I watched the game in a condensed version under, as a replay, but they seemed very confident. They didn't really seem getting rattled. I mean, and that comes from their coach on down. But for them to have that big defensive stand, that now also puts something in the mind of the committee. Forget about the AP vote, because that's just sometimes sports information directors do the voting, and it's just a convoluted mess.
Yeah.
But now in the committee's mind, they're looking and saying, wow, okay, this team isn't just a fluke. I mean, the BYU win was impressive on the scoreboard. It probably meant more to the student bodies of the two schools and to the alumni of of both schools because of their faith-based mission, which really drives the program and drives the university, everything in life on on the campuses. But this was okay. This is no joke. We really have to take a look at these guys. And I will be interested to see what kind of bowl game. Are they going to get in the college football playoff? No, they're not.
No.
As much as I love to watch them play, and I love to watch how they play, they are not that caliber of team. But I think that they have proven, especially if they win out, that they are deserving of a major bowl invitation.
Right.
It's not.
NY6 implications if they finish 11-1, which if you look at the rest of their schedule, they go to UConn this week, who have been pretty decent this year, but I don't see them be able to run with Liberty. Then go to Virginia Tech, who have been abysmal this year.
Yeah.
And then they finish the season against New Mexico State, who really hasn't been a great year or great team all year as well. This team can easily go 11-1. And Hugh Freeze, he just signed an extension. Does he stay? Does he go? Could that have been just an extension to make sure that Liberty has a nice buyout money bag for the program? Because we've seen that in the past where coaches will sign extensions, so when they do get bought out, it helps the program build. We've seen that happen. Hugh Freeze could have just done that, knowing that he's probably going to get offered by certain people. Maybe a little birdie told him on the side. However, or does he stay around? You said that there might be a possibility of him becoming one of those coaches that stick into the group of five. I just don't know. I don't know. Regardless, I can see this team as an 11-1 squad. I can see them getting invited to an NY6 bowl, or at least being in one of those nice bowls we see towards the end of the year. And it's exciting. It's exciting. They play UConn. They're currently a 14.5-point favorite. And I can see that happening for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's head to the Maction. We are in week 2 of the Maction, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about. We kind of got a taste last week with Maction, as we only got 4 games. Well, we're getting all 6 games of Maction this week. We got 3 on Tuesday, and we'd like to talk to you about them. And first, we start off with Eastern Michigan taking on Akron. Eastern Michigan is a 7-point favorite in this football game. Eastern Michigan's 5-4 against 1-8 Akron. Akron has had a rough year. I mean, that's probably the best way to say it. And we've said that, I feel like, for a very long time, that Akron's had a rough year. Their only win comes against St. Francis, PA, which is an FCS team. They have not won in the FBS at all. Looking at their other wins in the MAC, or other games in the MAC, I should say, not wins. They lost to Bowling Green by a field goal. They got beat pretty bad by Ohio, lost to Central Michigan, lost to Kent State, and then last week lose 27-9 against Miami of Ohio. This is a tough one, and being only a 7-point underdog in this one, it's hard not to point towards Eastern Michigan to win this game and win it by more than a touchdown. I know that there's some turnover concerns by Eastern Michigan's quarterback Powell as well, Taylor Powell, who has basically a 1-to-1 ratio with touchdowns and interceptions. But when you look at just this team, what they've done, Akron's allowed almost 450 yards per game. I just have to lean towards Eastern Michigan here. We've seen wilder things happen on Maction. We saw some crazy things happen on Maction last week.
Yeah.
But I just can't see this one. I don't think this is one of those crazy things that happen.
No, you can sum up Akron's season with this little achievement that we should pay a little honor to. Okay. Their senior punter, last name is Getman, surpassed 10,000 career yards punting.
Wow.
Now, right. So now that's great, and that's quite an achievement. So obviously he's going to get looks as an as an undrafted free agent, I'm sure.
Yeah, and the crazy thing, he's only a freshman, right? No, I'm just kidding.
But it seems like that, though, right? I mean, it does. But that just shows you how bad Akron has been.
Yeah,
especially in conference. I mean, sometimes MAC teams are sacrificial lambs early in the season, so you kind of like accept that and say, well, but if you're getting 10,000 career yards punting, that's telling you that your team is not producing much offensively. Interesting enough, Akron really had a path to upset Liberty early in the year.
As wild as that is, yeah.
Yes. I mean, they only scored 12 points. It was 4 field goals, but there were some mistakes in the red zone that was the only thing that kept them from ending the Liberty's hopes for any kind of Cinderella season. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't see Eastern Michigan stumbling here. One more win, they're bowl eligible. I don't know how many teams out of the MAC will actually get invited to a, but still, if you're in that conversation, that's 4 straight years for Eastern Michigan. Samson Evans, their senior running back, is 29th in the nation in running, 722 yards. And he's an all-purpose kind of a weapon. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He'll occasionally return punts. So he's going to be a fun guy to watch. If you're going to focus on somebody, it's going to be kind of fun to watch. But I think Eastern Michigan, they have a defensive end by the name of Jose Ramirez. He's a force. He's sort of like the Andre Carter. You think of Andre Carter in Army's defense. He's sort of that kind of dominant force, in the Eastern Michigan defense. I think last game was 9 solo tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a forced fumble, and he recovered a fumble. So, Eastern Michigan has enough to make this a very long night for Akron.
The only thing that I'll give a little credit here on the Akron side is that they've had to battle down a lot this season. And with that being said, DJ Irons, they have lost a lot in transfers, but the quarterback DJ Irons has put up some pretty decent yardage. We've seen that he has completed over 60% of his passes in the last 5 football games, and he's 17th in the nation in passing yards. Now, that's because of the situations he's been forced to be put into. But if they do find a way to get down, or they do have a strategy where they are pass heavy and can take control of the situation, you can rely, I feel like, on DJ Irons to be able to get the ball where you need to. We've seen him be able to throw the football. So that is my only caveat to if Akron is going to make this remotely close, Irons is going to play mistake-free football and be able to get the yards.
And they do have a Bolitnikoff candidate in Jacques Louis. I think his first name is Shockey, actually. But again, when you look at it, 63 catches, wow. 770 yards, wow. 2 touchdowns. Yep. If you're a Bolitnikoff caliber receiver and you're making that many catches, by accident, you would think you'd get almost average 1 touchdown a game, and he's had 2. So
I'm with you. Yep. All right, we head to a Battle of Ohio with the second MACtion game. And we talk about the Ohio Bobcats taking on Miami of Ohio. 6-3 Ohio against 4-5 Miami of Ohio. And Steve, last week we thought Ohio was going to have a hard time with University of Buffalo. And that was the complete opposite. Ohio does well at home against UB in the past, and that was no result or no different this year. They beat UB 45-24, and it was all on the back of some amazing play by their quarterback, Rourke, where he threw for 5 touchdowns, only 1 pick, and 317 yards in the matchup. He was 69% completion, and that's about what he's done for the entire season this year. He's looked really well, not just on paper, but doing a fantastic job for this team. He gets Ohio the first team in the MAC to be bowl eligible last week, and they go in to face Miami of Ohio as only a 1-point favorite. If we haven't learned anything from what happened last week, thinking that there's no way that I'm going to not take Ohio 2 weeks in a row. I didn't take them last week, and I and I ate my words for that one. I think Ohio can take care of Miami of Ohio. I really like what Rourke did, and I think he can continue that momentum and beat Miami of Ohio.
Ohio's getting the job done on both sides of the ball too. I mean, they have a great pair of defensive players that they certainly made a huge impact against the Bulls. But they scored on their first 3 possessions. Let's go back to the offense really quick. First 3 possessions, bang, bang, bang. They set the tone of the game. Ohio has gotten progressively better each week. They had some tough losses early, again, more sacrificial lamb kind of stuff. But I mean, by the power rankings, they are the number 1 team in the MAC. They're bowl eligible right now. I think if there's going to be any MAC team that does not win the MAC outright for the automatic, bowl, I forgot what that's called now. I know they play it in Detroit. I forgot what the bowl is that the MAC champion always goes to, but I can see them getting invited to a Pinstripe Bowl or some of the lesser bowls there. I mean, they've just played that well, and UB, they're a good football team. And they're well coached and they're disciplined and they've got a great quarterback. They shut down their running. They just shut it. There was no running game for University of Buffalo. So that tells me going forward that Ohio's defense, even though it might be overshadowed a little bit, they're going to get the job done. Key Thompson had 11 tackles. Bryce Houston had 2 sacks, and they were big sacks at opportune moments. So I think Ohio's got to feel good, even though they're on the road. I think they got to feel good going into this game. Miami of Ohio, they're home. I believe it's senior night, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that. The only thing that concerns me about Miami of Ohio is that they're under 30% on third down conversions. That means you're going to have some inconsistent offensive days, and I don't know against this Bobcat defense if that's going to bode very well. But it's going to be an entertaining game. It's not going to be a blowout. There's a reason that's only a 1 point. If it's a touchdown game? Yeah, I can see that. I can see it being a touchdown game. But I certainly would take Ohio in this particular game. What's the over-under? I didn't see it on this game. I have
50, I think it was. Let me see here. 50 and a half. Yep. Yeah, that sits about right where teams are averaging right now. If you combine the 2 scores together, how much they're averaging per game, they're about 53. But Miami is on the very low side of that. And we've seen Ohio's defense look really good. I would probably, if anything,
you have to go under.
I would probably play the under, yeah.
I'm not sure I'd even touch it because MAC games are competitive, even though on paper sometimes it seems it's a mismatch. They take their conference rivalries very, very seriously. So especially this being, an in-state rival. Yeah, I think I'd stay away from this game, but I would take Ohio outright.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. All right, and the last action game on Tuesday, this is going to be a good one as well. Ball State looking for their win number 6 to be bowl eligible as well. They got a tough task, though, taking on Toledo, who's already 6-3. Finn, I mean, that is when I think of if Toledo can win the football game, my mind immediately goes and sees that DeQuan Finn can do what he can do. We've seen him have some great games, and we've seen him have a couple rough moments, if you will, in this season. I think that's why they have 3 losses. Well, 2 losses. We know the Ohio State loss was one that was kind of inevitable, right? They lost to Buffalo on their last outing. They were on a bye week. We've talked about that loss. They looked really good for 3.5 quarters. And then they gave up a 24-point deficit to lose that game 34-27. I think they're going to come in against Ball State and play with a chip on their shoulder and play with a lot to prove. They've had adjustments. They've had to sit and soak about that loss for a week and a half now, almost 2 weeks. And they're going to come in with some pretty decent adjustments, if I think so. I think they come in against Ball State. I think they get it done. The odds are definitely in the favor of Toledo in this one. They're an 11.5 point favor. Over under is 51.5. You look at the points per game on each side, and they average about almost 60. So you'd want to usually hit the over on this one. That's probably what I'd lean toward as well. I think Toledo can get the job done in this game. I think Finn will find a way to get it done. He's already at 18 touchdowns on the year. I wouldn't be surprised if he surpasses 20 once this one's over.
Well, there is question as to whether he's going to play. He missed the Eastern Michigan game. He was out, and they still haven't said for sure that he certainly has not practiced. His backup against Eastern Michigan was okay, but he's not Daquan Finn. I mean, he's not. He can't throw the ball like Finn. He's not nearly the rushing threat that Finn is. So now, if he's out of this game, then you really have to wonder about the over. Plus, keep in mind that Toledo is the first in total defense in the MAC, and they're second in scoring defense. So I would urge you to go the under on this, because even if Finn does play, I don't know that he's going to be sort of like, with Bryce Young in Alabama. He's playing, but is he really 100%? So I would encourage you to consider going the under on this game. But Toledo, I think it's a pride thing. I think they want to win the MAC West. They want to play for the MAC championship, and I think that I think they were embarrassed by coughing up that lead in the fourth quarter to Buffalo, and I think they weren't happy in their last game. So I think Toledo is going to find a way to control the narrative in this game, and I think their defense is going to help them with that.
Yeah, I could see that. And I did see the thing about Finn. They're hopeful that he can go, but they're not sure. They think he might be back for the I-75 matchup next week instead. If he doesn't go, this game could look a lot different, and that minus 11.5 may not be the case in this one. Ball State's looking for that bowl win. When you sit at that 5 win mark and you're real close to 6 and it's towards the end of the season, you play different. You play real different, no matter who you're going against. So that's something to keep in mind.
I thought they looked really good last week too. I really did.
All right, everyone, that's going to wrap it up here for the SlasherU College Football Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us for our Monday mornings. Hope you enjoyed that one. We'll be back here with another episode and as we continue on this week with all of your SlasherU content. Check out our YouTube page because we have plenty content coming out with college football, college basketball, both on the men's and women's sides. As college basketball gets started today, we got plenty over on the Slasher YouTube page. Check it out. Hit a like, subscribe, comment. Definitely give some comments. We love all the engagement we've been seeing on our videos, Steve. This is exactly what we want from this project. All those comments is what makes us want to put out more videos for you guys.
Oh, absolutely. And we even like it when you point out that we're wrong.
Oh, for sure. That's like the best part.
Because it's really hard to get every fact right covering every team and every conference.
Oh, speak for yourself.
Well, I'm the one that's made the most mistakes, so I think that's a fair enough analysis right there. There's some deep down hot take right there on that one. Oh, okay. But honestly, even if we don't think we're wrong, we love to see you not defending your players, but building up your players, or saying, well, you haven't considered this, or what about this? That makes following games that much more enjoyable for us. So don't be shy. Okay. And we will reply. It might take us a day or so, depending on what our recording schedules are, but we're going to get back to you. And we want the conversation to keep going. Just because a video was this week doesn't mean we can't still be talking about it 2 weeks from now.
Completely agree. We reply to every single comment on our YouTube page. So we encourage you to send us a line. We'd love to engage with you. So thank you again for joining in and listening or watching wherever you're taking in SlasherU. We'll be back here with another episode next time. Take care.